Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Today's guest is Dan Marrazza, the Director of Digital Strategy at Pro Football Hall of Fame. Dan is a digital and social media strategist and content creator with a proven track record of developing and executing content strategies for a diverse portfolio of sport brands. He has worked for Vegas Golden Knights, DraftKings, and has written several pieces for NHL.com, NBC, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, and more. Get ready to learn about Dan's professional journey through sport, his best advice for young people with ambitions to work in sport, why Facebook is the best performing platform for Pro Football Hall of Fame, and much more. Dan Marrazza, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good too. I'm very excited to talk to you, and you are the Director of Digital Strategy at Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That is correct.
That's a pretty cool job.
Oh, yeah, but no, it's been great. I've been here for about 6 months now and in Canton, Ohio. And I feel like it's one of those things that you could walk through the Hall of Fame every day, and every day you're going to see something that you did not see, that you just missed, just because there's so much stuff there. So for me, not only being a sports guy who's worked in sports most of my life, but just being a history guy too, it's just it's a kid in a candy store when it comes to all the things that you can learn, some of the cool stories that are out there.
I'm sure it is. Your focus is on the digital side. So what does it mean to be Director of Digital Strategy?
Yeah, so in our case, it leans mostly on the social media side, although there's some website elements that go into that too. So what it kind of means would be is if you look at the Pro Football Hall of Fame that we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Our mascot has a TikTok account. His name is Goldie the Goat, because Hall of Fame, the Goat. I know I'm so goofy for even explaining that. But we're from there as well as LinkedIn. So it's leading the strategy. It's leading the strategy. It's being the person who produces some content, who works with other departments, who works with sponsorships, who works with the executive team, and just being that external voice, that first open door that people see when they see the Football Hall of Fame is our online platforms, and just being that representative and trying to bring the museum to life, but even beyond bringing the museum to life, also celebrating the sport of football as a whole and in general, beyond just those that are, the 362 members of the Hall of Fame is that this is the haven of football, and that's something that we try to celebrate. So trying to bring that to life on a daily basis.
That's fantastic. So would you say that you're a football guy? Because I know you have worked in a lot of different sports.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that is that when I started working in sports, I was always in hockey. That was always my sport as a kid. And I had always looked at it that hockey was my business and the other sports were my pleasure. That was always the internal expression that I would use. And so in my case is in 2018, I had left the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL to go to DraftKings. And that was the first, at the time I was 31. And I had been in hockey since I started as an intern when I was 16. So really a lot of time spent in hockey. However, at DraftKings, it was one of those things, that's every sport. It's not necessarily one specific. And the role that I held there was launching their social media right when the United States had legalized sports betting. And by being exposed to so many different sports and seeing so many different things am I still a huge hockey guy? Of course. The jersey, even in my background, is my whole wall is the jerseys of places I've either interned or worked over the years. That's what I have behind me. But at the same time, I've always been an all sports guy too. I just think professionally, as I've kind of developed, it's opened up more opportunities just by having more overall experience. And as I've learned too, is a lot of the skills really are transferable. I'm still learning some things. I will say that I can't recite all the Super Bowl winners quite as quickly as I can recite all the Stanley Cup winners, but I'm getting there. That's part of the stuff you learn on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm sure. But you know the most recent Stanley Cup winner?
Of course. I honestly, you could ask me any one of them back to 1893, and I think I got it. And I think I got it nailed.
Is that so? I work in ice hockey as well, but I wouldn't be able to check you on your answers. So
So you can ask me and just assume I'm right, just for the sake of the show. And
that's true. So I will go my birth year then, 1993.
1993, Montreal Canadiens over the LA Kings in 5 games. The Canadiens won 10 games in overtime in the playoffs that year.
That's impressive.
Super quick. That was also the year I started going to hockey games too. So.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
That's fantastic. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about. We will go through much of the things that you have done, but let's talk about Vegas Golden Knights first.
Sure.
Because I mean, the franchise was it was new when you started working there. Also, it was kind of new.
Mm-hmm.
So from like a digital strategy perspective, how is it to work for a brand that is not really established yet?
For sure. I mean, when I got there, I was the 5th employee in the history of the team. That's pretty early on. We didn't have a team name. We didn't have a team president. We certainly didn't have any players. We had ticket sales folks that had done a great job, which is one of the major reasons they were able to get the team. And then it was me, and it happened incredibly quickly as well, where the NHL granted the franchise on June 22nd, 2016. I got there on June 19th. I had gotten the offer on June 10th, and my first interview was June 6th. So in a stretch of 13 days, I got contacted for my first interview and was on the ground in Las Vegas. Like, you can't make that up. Sometimes I wish all the job processes could go that fast, because, sometimes, it's not usually that way. So yeah, when I got there, I mean, I couldn't tell anybody that I got the job, just because the league had not given the franchise yet. If I'm starting to tweet like, hey, I'm now the director of digital and social media for the Vegas Golden, the Vegas whatever, the Vegas whoever's, is that at that point, as it would not have been a good way to start the job by blowing the cover that the NHL was going to be giving them the team. So when I got there, is like I said, I landed there on a plane, and and the way they did it was, over the summer, each employee had like a week to go back and get their stuff and gradually move out, where they put us in hotels. I mean, we were so new that the first night I checked in, there wasn't even a company credit card yet. There wasn't even a company credit card yet. When it came to the digital aspects specifically, is that it was, what do we even name the accounts? Because if you have no team, what do you name? What do you secure? And things like that. Fortunately for me, I had also previously worked at the NHL league office. And whenever there is a launching of a franchise, it's a franchise. You're not your own company. You're part of the league as a whole. And the NHL itself really played a really integral role in helping us launch, in terms of claiming handles quickly, even just from the fact that extra hands on deck, just because, when you only have one person like that. But in terms of developing the strategy, it's definitely really different from being an established team. And one of the reasons is, normally, if you were going to, even say you were a team now that you wanted to rebuild your strategy, you're going to go in, you're going to meet with your executive team, you're going to discuss what the goals are and what you want to accomplish, and then you're going to start branching out and figuring out how to do that. In our case, the executives that would need to answer these questions did not even exist yet. So, and in terms of even like the financial aspect of like attracting corporate partnerships and things like that, we didn't have a corporate partnerships team yet. So from that aspect, it was really new. So from the beginning, the main thing we wanted to hit was a tone. And the tone that we had gotten from above is that people forget, now that Las Vegas is such the hot city, where you got the Raiders are there, and there's talks that maybe they'll get a baseball team, is people forget it's not that long ago, but we were the first major league team in town. And there had always been that, and sports betting wasn't legalized then either in the United States. So people would always think of Las Vegas as the city that, they can't have a team, almost like it's the taboo. What we looked at it was that we're not going to be afraid of what we are. We want to embrace all things that is Las Vegas. And we don't know how good our team is going to be, which you can't make it up. That the team almost won the Stanley Cup in its first season. You can't make it up. Is that whether we are 82-0 or 0-82, we're going to be entertaining, and that we're going to be something that when people come here, even if they don't know the difference between a blue line and a clothesline, they're going to have a good time coming here, and that we're going to be inviting and teaching the game, but also just overall entertainment. So that was the initial. And then as different executives start to get brought in, you start building out some of that structure in terms of corporate partnerships and what your graphics are going to look like, even things like that. What fonts do you use? So many things like that need to be established. So I would say we started with a big idea, and as the team got built out, we started to branch out into maturing into being more like other teams. I would say until we were fully staffed, it was when I got there, it was 15 months till we played a game. It took about a year from when I got there to be fully staffed. So, you know, is some of the days is we always used to say this. The days are like weeks, the weeks are like months, and the months are like years, and how much gets done here just because of how new it is. And from the outside, you would definitely say, man, they launched and they became this overnight sensation, so quickly. But on the inside, there's some slow days that are too, where, the answers can't be answered just because there's nobody there to answer the questions yet. So it's really a combination of establishing a foundation and then, evolving off of that kind of as you go. It's a really fun challenge. It's the opportunity to with the team you sit with, not by yourself, but with the team you sit with, define what you want to be, where existing franchises have had brands that are 70, 80, 90 years old. I mean, this finger, I got to press the button that announced the first signing of a player in the history of the team. I don't think the Montreal Canadiens, I don't think there were buttons for computers back then when they had their first player. So there were just so many things like that just made it so special, and things that I think the longer that goes by, I've been out of there for about 4.5 years now. I think the longer that goes by, you just think, dang, there's some really cool things that you got to see that one day you'll tell your grandkids about.
Yeah. Maybe that finger will be in Hockey Hall of Fame at some point.
At some point, is like, I guess I'm trying to, as I branch out here in my career, I'm like a 2-sport star now. I was going to compare I was going to make a joke and try to compare myself to Bo Jackson or something like that, but I can't even do that with a straight face. What's the quote? It's a Sopranos quote. I'm a New Jersey guy. He didn't have the makings of a varsity athlete, so I should not compare myself to Bo Jackson. But to that point is you never know. I'm a little bit more versatile now than I was a few years ago.
So from a social perspective, one of the aspects is, of course, to connect with your fans. But when you have a brand new team, you don't have any fans yet. So how was the process of, building the fan base and attracting fans to a completely new team?
Yeah. So one of the things that I found when I moved to Las Vegas, I had only been there once in my life before I got the job. And it was coincidentally a couple months before. And I had covered the opening of T-Mobile Arena, where it was a concert. It was the Killers and Wayne Newton. And I covered it for Sports Illustrated, I think it was. And I'd never even been there before. So I didn't really know the city that well. I've seen The Hangover, I've seen Vegas Vacation, I've seen movies. And, the city has, that reputation of being like Sin City. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. The thing that I learned when I got there is once you get off the strip, there's a really big heart in that city. And there's definitely an element of, it's a city of 2.2 million people. A lot of people are from there. And if you grew up in Las Vegas, whether you're 20, 30, 50, 60, you've never had anything of your own. What you've had is people from outside your city who visit here and sometimes think that they own the place, so to speak, and that you are the place that people go from other places and all have their own thing. However, this was the first thing that they could call their own. I still remember one of the first days after I moved in, I had no stuff in my house, and the cable guy came in. And he was like looking around, and probably the same jersey that I have behind me was probably like sitting on the floor. And he's like, this is like an interesting set of stuff this guy has. So he asked me, who am I, pretty much? So I explained to him, I'm with the new hockey team, and he got so excited. He's like, I've never been to a hockey game in my life. I don't know the rules, but I am so excited. I'm getting season tickets, because there was that aspect of this is our own. So going in, there was a lot more enthusiasm that I don't think any of us could have ever banked on in that regard, of how primed this and overdue the city was to get that. But in terms of how do you build fans beyond that, a lot of it is through experience. And it's not just on social media. It's also our in-game entertainment, where our in-game entertainment crew, they were magicians. I don't even know. I don't even know how to describe them other than they were magicians. I've never seen any game presentation have NBC skip their commercials for the Stanley Cup Finals to put on the pregame show in the arena. That's how good these people were. So I think a lot of that did go back to driving the entertainment aspect, but it was also getting out in that community. It was not only within Las Vegas, but the team's TV territory was rather large too. Their TV territory extends into Wyoming and Montana and Idaho and places that maybe are not densely populated, but still it's large areas of land, the team does caravans there. I was on the first one. The team has done it since, where it was going on bus trips and going through these cities and bringing players up there and really try to do it on a very personal basis. I think is what it kind of came down to. And I think even when it came to social media, of how that wraps into that as well, is we want people to feel like we're talking with them. That this is like the buddy on the couch, so to speak, that is introducing them to hockey. Because one of the things that I find is that a lot of people will say, oh, the team was so good. Didn't that help? Well, of course it helps when your team is that good. It's never, nobody's ever going to complain from that. But the thing that I'm a big believer in is that 30 years from now, 20 years from now, when people think back to the games they went to with their loved ones or their kids, they remember the feeling more so than they remember who won and who lost. I know in my case, I grew up in New Jersey, going to a lot of New Jersey Devil games in the Marty Brodeur, Scott Stevens era. And, I remember the results of a handful of them, but mostly I remember just the tradition is we would go on Saturday nights, it was 15 minutes away from where I grew up, getting the food, going with mom or dad, and that's what you remember more. You remember that a lot of times more so than whoever won and lost. So we really looked at it, and I still look at it this way, is that with social media, that didn't exist though when I was a kid. This is something that gives the ability to bring the fans along that journey. That being a fan of a team, like right on the other side of me, I think in the other room here before we hopped on, I think there's the Mets and the Dodgers are on. And in my case, I was a Met fan when I was 5 years old. For 30 years now, is everywhere I moved, it's part of the journey. And it's not necessarily about who wins and loses. It's about that. And it's about the life memories that come with that. We look at it as we have the ability to lift the veil and bring people inside to a lot of these things to really enhance the intimacy to which that was the case and really connecting with people on a one-on-one basis. I think the combination of the built-in enthusiasm that already existed in the city and plus a killer game entertainment crew that we had, plus a team that won, and plus the ability to connect on such a personal level directly on social media, I really can only describe it as lightning in a bottle. It's something that we never have really seen before that, and we may never see again quite like that.
This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. Yeah, you mentioned it before also, you have also worked for DraftKings. So what would you say is the biggest difference, except for that you work for like one sport and now you have more sports, but what are other differences?
For sure. For me, one of the big steps was moving up in terms of my career, just in terms of not always being the person pressing the buttons, but managing and delegating and things like that. That was a big step for me. But I think the biggest thing, and I learned this when I got there, is that sports betting is a federally regulated industry, is that it's not necessarily a free-for-all to post whatever you want, because there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of regulations that go with that. The other thing there is that a lot of these rules and regulations were written so long ago that social media was not even in mind when a lot of these were written. So in our case, we were the first mobile sports book in the United States to launch a social media presence. So from that aspect, a lot of the very beginning was trying to make sense of all these different laws. And as it would be legalized one state at a time, you would also have different rules in different states. And sometimes they would conflict with each other. So I would say the biggest difference was there was a lot more foundation that needed to be built. And a lot more foundation needed to be built just because not only that, but also we had a larger team than we had than we would have had in the NHL. And just that communication aspect and building out that communication of, if we don't know something for sure, if we could do it, how do we get approval? How do we consult our legal team and do it in a timely manner? So I think with DraftKings, a lot of it was building out that structure in that regard. The second difference is it's more of a B2B business as opposed to a team with fans, where if you're with the Vegas Golden Knights, as I was mentioning, you sell experience. But with DraftKings, you are selling a product. It's daily fantasy, it's sports betting. And you don't necessarily have built-in allegiances the same way that the Montreal Canadiens have a built-in allegiance, but a sports book or a restaurant doesn't have that same degree of religious devotion from fans. So from that aspect, it was in our cases, it was not about winning the internet per se. It was really about building a solid foundation. It was, especially as it relates to the bigger picture of the company, is that this is a process that's still ongoing in the United States. Is a lot of states have not legalized sports betting yet. In some case, states, you need to get licenses in individual states. Is keeping your nose clean in every capacity is very important as you're looking for laws to get passed that hopefully benefit your company, as you're looking to get licenses in these places. So a lot of what we were doing was building out structure in terms of that regard. At least in my role, was building out a lot of structure and building a lot of precedent for how things were going to be. But also, as soon as you would build precedent, often changing it, because the rules change so quickly in that regard. I find that the biggest differences is so much more has to go on behind the scenes in a company like that, because there's just so much more on the line. And adding into the fact that in my later time of my time there is the company became publicly traded. And when you're a publicly traded company, there's a lot of rules on what you're allowed to say or not say, because you can't be accused of trying to pump the stock based on your tweets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So really, it was a lot of rules, but a lot of fun. There were definitely times I wish I went to law school when I was looking through some of the things, and I'm like, oh man, I used to tweet memes and now I'm reading laws. But then again, it's also part of that maturing process, so it was really, it was a fun challenge, in a completely different way. And similarly is I got to be the first in something, is that not as I said before, a lot of people say Vegas Golden Knights, once in a lifetime experience to launch something new. DraftKings wasn't a new company, but it was a new sports book, and it was the first one of any kind. So I got to launch that too. So it's kind of cool that I can kind of say, although the joke I always say is DraftKings, I lived in Boston, that I'm probably the only person ever who had to move out of Las Vegas to work in sports betting.
That's true.
I did it completely in reverse, and completely in reverse is that, but really fun challenge, really different way. Some really, really intelligent people that came from backgrounds that I would not have come from the tech world and things like that. But I learned so much there that it was almost like the scene in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy's in black and white and now all of a sudden it's in color. Is that for so long things had always been so one way or a couple ways that I had known from being in sports and now and team sports and things like that. Now I see this. It was seeing the color, and it was seeing so many business practices that could be brought back and work well in sports as well. So it was really, a nonstop education, and it was a massive opportunity for me to learn. I would say the other one, I say this tongue in cheek, was the NHL is a lot more shirt and tie. You see team players walk into the rink and, they have their suits on and they're buttoned up. And, when you work for a team, it's the same way. You're on the team plane, you dress the same way. And those are the rules. And DraftKings, there really wasn't much of a dress code. So even I was not wearing a shirt and tie every day. And in my case, I went to prep school. I had to wear a shirt and tie in high school and in middle school. So it was the first time in my life that I was going to my place of business, not wearing a shirt and tie. And that was so different. It was, sometimes I felt like almost like I would grab for my neck, oh, it's not there. And I'm kind of panic, but I'm not going to lie. I got used to it really quick.
That's great. And yeah, you mentioned that you had two once in a lifetime experiences there with DraftKings and Vegas. Are you intrigued by the challenge, or do you see it as a learning opportunity, or what is it that interested you?
It's a good question. Is that, in my case too, for me to break into the industry before I was with the Golden Knights, I had a really long path to break into the industry. It could be a difficult one. I took whatever internship or seasonal role or contract thing or freelance that you really ever could. And like I said, I started when I was in high school, which was in 2004. The end of my junior year in high school is when I started as an intern. And Vegas was the first job I had that didn't have an end date on it. Is a lot of media jobs and writing jobs, as I'm sure you know too, they have end dates on them or things like that. So for me, it was a really long road in that regard. I think when the Vegas opportunity came along, I don't think I was necessarily looking and saying, hey, I need to be able to start up and have this once in a lifetime thing. It was almost like it got thrown at me. I've been this is the stability that I've been looking for a long time. This is the coolest thing ever. What person doesn't say, hey, I'd love to live in Vegas at some point in my life? Who doesn't say that at some point too? Is that it was really a perfect storm. But to that other point is when I've lived in 8 states, that people a lot of times ask me well, how'd you pick this state or whatever the case was? In my case, it's always been about following the best opportunity and building my career. I'm single. I don't have any kids. Is that I'm not tied down in that regard. Is that it's always been about the best opportunity. I think once I got that opportunity with the Golden Knights and we led the league in engagement and things went incredibly well, is that I think a lot of companies that were in similar situations start becoming more attracted to you because you've done it before. And those are the people like DraftKings. I didn't apply to them. They came to me, and that was kind of how the process kind of worked there, is that you have a lot more of that. So I think it almost became starting to find a niche. You start to find a little bit of a niche because you kind of done that before. Even when I've done some consulting over the last couple of years too, a lot of times it's been companies that are trying to build out structure early on in the game that way. So it was the fluke of a lifetime that Las Vegas found me, so to speak. And, so many things, story for another day about how I even ended up there. There's so many things had to go right for me to end up there, but also, like I said, is that led to the next thing and led to the next thing and led to the good opportunities. And I think I've always said is it exciting? Yeah, it's really exciting to be able to do something like that. But I'd be lying if I said that was the plan I went to begin with. I always say in careers, you're pointing the ship in a certain direction but the GPS is unknown. There's going to be different directions you're going to have to go. I mean, when I graduated college, social media for teams wasn't even a thing yet. I mean, I graduated in 2009. I think teams started getting their accounts when I was 2 weeks left in college. And so from that aspect, there's so many, even to the point is the Golden Knights started in 2016, DraftKings started in 2012. I started as an intern in 2004. Neither company even existed when I started too. So I think a lot of it was I was always pointed in a direction of what I wanted to be in sports and telling stories. But as things have evolved and I found what I'm good at, and as different opportunities have presented myself, it's one thing leads to the other in that regard.
Yeah, I like that you talked about the whole journey there, and it's not, a straight line. It's has its bumps on the road. And that's always a question that I ask, if you've had any bumps on the road. And I'm going to assume that one of them was because your position at DraftKings got eliminated during COVID, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things that you never expect. I think, for one, I remember the last time I was in their office which was in March of 2020, right for the beginning of the pandemic. I think a lot of us said, "Oh, see you next week," not really understanding what it was going to be. Little did I know I was never going to step foot in the office again. I still worked there for several more months, but there's so many things that I feel like it became such a cliche, unprecedented times, but it really was unprecedented times. In my case at the time, I didn't even know what to do when it happened. I was so caught off guard because you have an identity. A lot of us in sports, and definitely have been guilty of it. So much of your personal identity gets tied up in things of what you're doing in that regard. And in this case, you're going to try to get on a job market, and you're going to do it in the middle of the pandemic when there's no sports being played and you have no idea when it's going to come back. You also enter the job market where I'm certainly not, I'm not an old guy, but I'm not as young as I used to be either, as I'm not a recent college graduate. So from that aspect is that there's certainly fewer roles, as you advance through your career, there's fewer roles the further up you go. And I saw some folks even at higher levels than me that were seasoned executives that didn't have full-time roles for 1-2 years. Some of them still don't, just because things didn't open. So it was incredibly scary in that regard. At the beginning, it was saying to yourself, don't panic. And then a couple months in, you're trying to do contract work. And in my case, I got really lucky that one of my former bosses with the Vegas Golden Knights was trying to help me find some contract work. Some of it was even doing LinkedIn profiles for executives and redoing their LinkedIns and things like that. It was doing everything you can. It was, fighting for survival. I think it's one of those things that people will always tell you this, and it, but you don't really know it until you've lived it, is you really find out who your friends are. That you really find out who your friends are when all of a sudden you're not in the cool, flashy job, and you're not that person. I would say for me is not religious, but only by the grace of God, that you find your way through on something like that. Is everybody needs a break sometimes. In my case, I got really fortunate that the Pro Football Hall of Fame had 2 openings at the same time, where it was director of digital strategy and also director of web strategy, which is more website and web content and things of that nature. And it gave them an opportunity to kind of re-examine how the team was going to be built. And in my case, got in touch with them, and it was really looking for, not a new company. The company's been here since 1963, for 60 years. So not a new company, but a company that was looking to, maybe do some new things. So for me, it really kind of lent itself in that regard. There's definitely times that I say to myself, well, what would have happened if the two guys that were in those jobs before did not leave within a few weeks of each other? And what I've learned is you'll drive yourself crazy if you think that way. You're really well with the what ifs. I think, the lesson that you kind of learn is, and this is the biggest lesson I learned is that you really learn to not sweat the small stuff. That, for example, you always hear the expression, the Sunday scaries that people always want to use, is that it's afraid of going to work on Monday. The real Sunday scaries are when Monday's coming and you don't have anywhere to go, when you don't have health insurance, when you're sick and you need to go to a doctor, when you don't have a place to live anymore and you're moving in with your parents again, is that those are the real scaries. So for me, what I learned is the small things don't scare me anymore. They don't rattle me anymore. In the old days, I'm from New Jersey. I grew up right outside of New York. You get frustrated in traffic. I don't get frustrated about traffic anymore either. Maybe a little, but not really, because I'm like, I know in a few hours, I'll be at home. I'll be in front of the TV. I'll be eating dinner and everything will be okay. And I've learned that some of those other things are things that you don't know if they're going to be okay. So in my job, there's always stresses and challenges that go with these, especially in fast-paced jobs. But a lot of those little things that maybe used to rattle me in the past, or maybe not rattle, but maybe impacted me, they don't impact me anymore, because I'm just so grateful for the opportunity that I have every day. And I think even when it comes to, the type of coworker, the type of teammate that you are as well, I always say there's two types of energy people can have. That you can be the person that when they walk in the room sits up a little bit more because here comes the cavalry, here comes the help. Or you could be the person that walks in the room and people slump their shoulders and go, oh no, they're going to catch something. But I think a lot of it is people mimic, though. A lot of times mood and temperament can mimic the people around you. In my case, I feel like even in situations that might be stressful, I'm so calm now. I'm so calm now from them that I think I hope it has a good effect on my coworkers as well. That it's like, hey, all that we have to do is do it. Yeah, this is a challenge. This is a curveball we didn't expect, but we know how to do this. We're smart. We're qualified people. We just got to do what's in front of us and take care of what we know how to control, and we'll be good. I think that perspective is something that I don't think I would have wanted to acquire it in the manner that I did, but now that I have acquired it, I'm incredibly grateful that I have it.
I'm sure. And as you said, I think that one person can make a big difference. If you are in a group and one person, you just have this negative energy, that can definitely, pull down the whole team.
And vice versa. If somebody has the positive energy too, you can be the one person that sparks it up, or the one person that says, no need to panic, we got this. And this is how we got this. I think that's one of the things that beyond the skills, it's the soft skills. People talk about hard skills, whether it's creating graphics or learning how to write. But the soft skills are really the things that, as I've seen people that are excellent in business do well, it's those skills. And they're also the skills that don't get outdated. Is my college education might be a little outdated just because social media wasn't around back then, but people skills are always going to be a thing. It doesn't really matter, what evolves in that regard. So I do think, that I think the word I use is empathy, not sympathy. Sympathy is feeling bad, not really understanding what the person's going through. But empathy is to really understand and to feel the pain of others and to feel the happiness of others as well. And I think once you're able to be a little bit more in tune with some of those things, which, I certainly am now, based on some of the experiences that I have, is that I just think it makes you not only a better coworker, but just a better person too. I think it makes you a better person. I think it makes you somebody that people hopefully gravitate to. And it's something that it's the intangibles. I feel like it's the hockey cliche. People always want to talk about the intangibles, is that it's not one of the analytics. It's one of the intangibles that you might not notice its impact today or tomorrow, but over the long run, if you have somebody with those skills, it's going to help your team in so many ways that you can't even imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree with you more. Talking about a little bit digital and social trends, there are several social media platforms. So since you are the director of the digital strategy, do you need to be on all platforms? Are some platforms better than others? What's your opinion?
I think it depends on the company. And I think one of the things that I've always looked at is it's about quality and not quantity. It's depending on what your business goals are, what your demographics are, what your staff size is in terms of things. Is that, to me, I think it's about building a foundation, and it's establishing what do we want to accomplish with our social media, and who are our customers and who are those people, and finding ways to connect in that regard. For example, with the Pro Football Hall of Fame compared to a DraftKings, when I was at DraftKings, our audience skewed a lot younger in their 20s. With the Pro Football Hall of Fame, a lot of the audience is a little bit older, 30s and up. Is with DraftKings, Twitter and Instagram are our popular platforms. Here, believe it or not, Facebook is still our most popular platform. We get more engagement on Facebook than we get on Twitter and Instagram combined, usually. So from that perspective, is the way you would approach it here, you cannot necessarily approach it somewhere else. I think the big thing that's important is to have the foundation and not get immediately skewed or by the fads, that, so to speak. I think the big one that's over the last couple of years is TikTok. There's a tremendous amount of eyeballs, but it's a new skill. It's a skill that not everybody has. It's something that needs to be learned. Is the overall business and how it ties back to the business, I think, is still being developed in a lot of ways too. But the eyeballs are there's so many eyeballs there that companies go, we got to get on TikTok. But sometimes it might not be practical. It might not fit your company to be on TikTok, or you just might not have the staff size to do so. So to me, I think it's less about following the trends, so to speak, than it is about nailing down your own foundation. And once you nail down your own foundation, then you start to build out from there. I almost kind of call it, it's building the base of the house, and the other stuff is the cherries on top. And once you have the foundation and you know what your team wants to accomplish, and you know where your sponsors are and where they want to be as well, is that a lot of those other aspects of what platform and frequency and things of that nature, I think a lot of it falls into place once you build that foundation.
Yeah, very interesting. You said with Facebook, also an older audience. My younger brother says that only old people are on Facebook. He's never there anymore. He's more on, Snapchat and whatever other.
Do you know what makes me feel bad on Facebook is that when I try to stay in touch with the people that I grew up with, most of the people I grew up with, this is not the type of industry that they work in, is that most of the only platform I can find most of the people I grew up with on is Facebook. And I start looking myself in the mirror and I'm like, I feel young. I feel young, where do we kind of miss it? But I think the other aspect of Facebook, all kidding aside, is that not all content performs. It's almost like fireworks. When you shoot them off, there's some duds that don't go off. Yeah. But when something does go off, it picks up momentum so quickly. We had a Facebook post a few months ago that had 3 million impressions organic, and it was simple. It was Carl Weathers, who played Apollo Creed and played Chubbs Peterson and Happy Gilmore, played for the Oakland Raiders. And not a lot of people know that because his career wasn't very long. On the anniversary of one of the movies coming out, we did a split screen of Apollo Creed and Carl Weathers in his Oakland Raider uniform. And it got 3 million impressions on Facebook. That's unbelievable. So it shows, though, that there really is that way to kind of break through. But I think there's also a lot of narrative. I think from that PR perspective, is like you said, your brother had said, I think the perspective is that old people are on Facebook. And I think Facebook has some, a challenge, not a negative, but more of a challenge, just to establish that it still really is a good place for content. And I think that's only going to be done by cleaning up various features, making things a cleaner user experience. I mean, I think one of the real big challenges with social media in general is the platforms, the algorithms not favoring such extreme talk, whether it's opinions and politics and things of that nature. I think that when sometimes the more extreme that opinions are, they spread like wildfire and they get shared into people's feeds. And I think for a lot of people that, I've heard it too, in Facebook, they go, oh, I don't want to see my relatives fighting about politics. I'm not going to go on Facebook. But there is, that might be not entirely true. I think there is a certain element to that. And I think that you're not going to be able to say, and I don't think you should police every single thing. Yeah, you need to monitor things that are indecent, but to some degree, I don't think you should stop people from talking about politics, for example, on social media. But it's also knowing that these algorithms are favoring certain things. And I think not only for these individual platforms, I think for society in general, being in a spot that it's not about hot takes as much, and it's not about these extreme opinions skewing so many people because they gain such an audience. It incentivizes people to be more extreme because that's how they get the eyeballs. I think that's something that will bring a lot of younger people back to Facebook, but I think in general will really be a big help for social media as that hopefully gets figured out.
Approaching the end here, is there something that I haven't asked you yet that you want to bring up?
I would say advice for young people breaking into the business. Yeah, so it's a tough industry. Is that people will always tell you that, and they're not lying in that regard. I think one of the things that if you're, coming out of school or in school, or even, if you're a young professional, or even somebody like where I was in my 30s and my role had gotten eliminated, is that as best you can, try not to pay attention to what other people are doing. I know I've been guilty of that at sometimes too, but the thing is, success, like you were saying earlier, is not linear. Is people have their own paths in that regard. And especially as you're breaking out of school, you'll see people that get jobs before you that a lot of times you will not think they're smarter than you, and they might not be, and they might not be more qualified than you either. And it can be very frustrating sometimes. And it was for me coming out of school, when you say like, hey, I'm living in my parents' basement, and my classmate who I, thought I was better than academically and performed better than, is now in their own apartment and things like that. It could really get into unhealthy thinking. So as much as you possibly can you have to focus on what you have to do, first and foremost. Second is that it's a very small industry, is that people know each other. People know each other. Is that one of the things that never goes out of style is class. Is that it's easy to be classy when things go well, but it's not as easy to be classy when things don't go well. I think, however, when things don't go well, that's your opportunity to distinguish yourself as classy. Is that if you don't get a job, I'm a believer, send a handwritten thank you note. Appreciate the time, because the thing that you'll find the longer you go is that some of the same names will continue to circle around, that reputations get out. And if you establish early on that you're a person of class, you become somebody that people want to help. And if you establish yourself as somebody who is maybe not the classiest, you're someone that people don't want to help. And since the business is so small and so much of it is based on referrals, and it really is, it's really a lot of times right place at the right time. There have been times I've benefited from right place at the right time. And there have been times that I've been torched because I had the wrong place at the wrong time, or somebody else at the right place at the right time. And that's something that you can't control. And it can be very frustrating at times. But my advice would be if you treat everybody the same way, which is the best you possibly can, with honesty and integrity and dignity, and you work hard, and it's okay not to be the smartest person in the room. It's okay to make mistakes as long as they're not, too big, as long as you learn from them. As long as you learn from them and you don't hide from them, and you're a person that way. I find that, yes, you'll still need some luck. You'll still need some right place at the right time, the right opening, and the right boss. But you start turning the odds in your favor when you start doing the right thing that way. And it might not benefit you today. It might not benefit you tomorrow, but will in the long run. I know in my case, I got a job once at NBC where the person that referred me, I met at a kids' hockey game that I was covering. It was a charity game. And I didn't know one of the kids' mothers was like a business executive. I didn't know. And I was just talking to her, and it turned out she was a big executive who knew somebody from NBC. The job opened, and she made a call, and all of a sudden, I was working at NBC. And it was in Central Park too. If you want the visuals, Central Park, like 2 days before Christmas on the pond, is that you say to yourself, "Man, what if I hadn't talked to that hockey mom? What would have happened to me? I might not be talking to you today. You don't know." But to that point, you don't know who those people are going to be. So that's why you got to treat people kind of the same way. And I think as you do that and really look at things as you're going to learn from mistakes, you're not going to rely just on job postings. You're going to network, and you're going to have conversations. When you network, it's not about how many people you've been in contact with. It's about how many people you establish relationships with, like genuine relationships that are two-way. It's not about you just asking for things. It's about you seeing what you could offer. And it's asking for advice before you ask for a favor, so to speak. I find that if you do things like that, it'll always be buckle up the chin strap a little bit, because, it's going to be a hard business. But at the same time, it's a really rewarding one. It's the one that all your friends that you grew up with who don't do this will say, "Wow, you got to do that," or "Wow, you got to be there." The thing is, there's a lot of reward to it as well. But really do the best to run your own race. Be a person of dignity. If someone's good to you, be loyal to them. If someone's good to you, and then all of a sudden maybe you're in a position of power and they're not, don't look at it, well, you got yours now, so you don't need them anymore. Because it's not linear. Fortunes go up and down the same way they do for teams. Some teams have their good periods and their down periods. And similar, as I said, you have the ability to establish yourself as classy when something goes wrong for you. You also have the ability to establish yourself as a wonderful friend and a strong colleague when you're able to step in and help someone when they are not in a position to strengthen themselves. Those are the things that get loyalty that people will never forget. And I know for me, I'll never forget the people that were good to me in that regard. So try not to put pressure on yourself as much as you can. Follow the process. And when you see new technologies, whether it be TikTok or anything else, don't be afraid. Try to learn it, because if you're able to learn it early, you might be able to offer something, that a company doesn't have. Is social media is only 10, 11 years old from 12 years old now from an industry standpoint. Is that if something new is out there, guess what? You have as much experience as somebody who's been here for the last 13 years because it's new. So don't be afraid of new things. It can be really intimidating sometimes, though, when new things come out that you go, oh man, another new thing that I got to learn. But no, look at it as an opportunity, because it's going to be a way to distinguish yourself. And as you start being able to learn things like that you're able to offer that other people aren't, in addition to being a good person and having integrity and starting to develop a network, that's when you start to be somebody that has the chance to really move up, get in and move up well.
And stay classy.
Hey. it's like, honestly, is I won't use it as the word. It's like, I'll do the clean version of it but it's really, don't be a jerk. It's like, don't be a jerk. It's sometimes I think some people think that they need to be a jerk to get ahead and they need to be tough. It's not the case. That doesn't mean you need to be weak and let people walk all over you either. But the thing is, kindness doesn't go out of style. Nobody got anything because they were mean. They might have gotten something in spite of being mean, but they never got anything because they were mean. Yeah. And I think that's something to really kind of keep in mind. So stay classy. Don't be a jerk, whatever you want to call it, is do that.
That's good advice. Final question. If you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
It's a couple. I think a guy that is excellent his name is Julian Valentine. He works for Open Doors. He works for Open Doors in a lot of player marketing. He used to work for the Colorado Rockies. He was their director of digital for about 10 years. He also was a national champion soccer player in the United States in college, and his brother plays pro soccer. He's somebody who has a lot of integrity and in addition to incredible skill. And he's somebody that, as I've been around, gotten to know in sports, is one of the people that I respect the opinion of tremendously. And not just is that he's what's the full package? Staying classy and being good. He's both of those. That's
a very good one. I appreciate that name. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.